We live in what I have called a wasteland, not merely of broken stones and dry bones, but of broken connections and dried-up sources of meaning. You feel it, don't you? That peculiar emptiness that haunts even our most successful moments, the sense that beneath all our noise and motion lies something unutterably hollow. Modern life promises everything yet delivers a curious form of spiritual starvation. We are, as I once wrote, hollow men, stuffed men, leaning together. But this diagnosis need not be our destiny. In my years of wrestling with the fragments of modern experience, from the fog-wrapped streets of London to the prayer-soaked stones of Little Gidding, I have discovered that meaninglessness itself can become the gateway to authentic meaning. The very awareness of our spiritual poverty marks the beginning of our journey toward genuine wealth. What if I told you that the answer lies not in escaping our fragmented world, but in learning to inhabit it differently? That the path to meaning runs directly through meaninglessness, and that our American capacity for reinvention, when wedded to the deep wisdom of tradition, offers unique possibilities for spiritual discovery. The fragments can be assembled. The wasteland can bloom. But first, we must learn to see with different eyes. Chapter 1: Recognizing the Symptoms of Spiritual Emptiness. The first movement toward authentic meaning requires brutal honesty about our condition. We are a civilization that has mastered the external arrangements of life while losing touch with its inner sources. Consider how we measure our days, by productivity metrics, social media engagement, consumption patterns. Yet somehow, beneath all this furious activity, something essential remains untouched, unfed. I have walked the streets of countless cities and observed the same phenomenon, people moving with purpose toward destinations that ultimately leave them as empty as when they began. The businessman hurrying to close another deal, the student accumulating credentials, the influencer crafting the perfect image, all participating in what appears to be meaningful activity while experiencing a profound disconnection from meaning itself. This is not mere pessimism, it is necessary recognition. In The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, I captured this modern predicament. I have measured out my life with coffee spoons. We live in teaspoon increments, small gestures that somehow never accumulate into anything substantial. We are always preparing to live but never quite living. The symptoms manifest everywhere. We experience time as a series of interruptions rather than a flowing stream. We consume entertainment that leaves us more restless than before. We engage in conversations that exchange information but touch no depths. We pursue relationships that multiply our connections while deepening our loneliness. Most tellingly, we seek meaning in experiences that offer intensity but not significance, mistaking the fever of stimulation for the warmth of genuine life. Yet recognizing these symptoms is itself a form of awakening. The very fact that you feel this emptiness, that you recognize the hollowness beneath the busy surface, indicates that something within you remembers what fullness might feel like. The spiritual immune system, we might say, is still functioning. Your dissatisfaction with meaninglessness is meaning trying to break through. This recognition requires what I call the objective correlative applied to our own experience, the ability to find external forms that correspond to our internal states, to name precisely what we feel rather than drowning in vague unease. When we can say, I am living a life of elegant desperation disguised as success, we have taken the first step toward transformation. Chapter 2: The Modern Obsession with False Substitutes. Having recognized our spiritual emptiness, we must examine our habitual responses to it. Modern culture offers an endless array of false substitutes for meaning, sophisticated forms of distraction that promise fulfillment while actually deepening our alienation. Understanding these counterfeit solutions is crucial because they often appear remarkably similar to authentic sources of meaning. Consider our relationship with achievement. We have transformed the natural human desire for accomplishment into a compulsive pursuit of external validation. The graduate degree, the promotion, the published book, The viral post, each promises to finally fill the void. Yet each success, once attained, reveals itself as surprisingly hollow. This is not because achievement itself is meaningless, but because we have severed it from any larger context of purpose. Similarly, we seek meaning through consumption of experiences. Travel becomes a form of spiritual shopping, as if accumulating passport stamps could substitute for deepening our understanding of place. We attend workshops on mindfulness while remaining fundamentally unmindful, read books about wisdom while avoiding the difficult work of becoming wise. We curate lifestyles that appear meaningful from the outside while feeling increasingly artificial from within. The cult of authenticity itself has become a false substitute. We perform authenticity, crafting personal brands that celebrate our uniqueness, sharing vulnerable moments that somehow feel calculated, pursuing self-expression that paradoxically makes us more conformist than ever. True authenticity, I have learned, emerges not from self-assertion but from self-transcendence, not from expressing what makes us different but from discovering what makes us deeply human. Perhaps most insidiously, we substitute intellectual understanding for spiritual transformation. We analyze our problems with sophisticated precision while remaining essentially unchanged by our insights. We develop elaborate theories about meaning while avoiding the actual work of creating it in our daily lives. Knowledge becomes another form of consumption rather than a pathway to wisdom. Even our pursuit of spirituality can become a false substitute when it focuses on peak experiences rather than sustained practice, on feeling good rather than becoming good, on personal empowerment rather than genuine humility before mystery. We seek spirituality that confirms our existing preferences rather than challenging us to grow beyond them. The antidote to these false substitutes lies not in rejecting all external forms but in learning to distinguish between activities that merely occupy our time and those that actually transform our being. This requires developing what I call spiritual discernment, the ability to sense whether our pursuits are leading us toward greater depth and connection or merely providing more sophisticated forms of escape. Chapter 3: Time, Memory, and the Eternal Present. To find authentic meaning, we must first understand the nature of time itself. Modern life fragments time into a series of urgent moments, each demanding immediate attention, leaving us perpetually anxious about the future while disconnected from both past and present. We live, as I wrote in Burnt Norton, in a world of time beyond me, always elsewhere, always when. But there exists another dimension of temporal experience, what I have called the intersection of the timeless with time. These are moments when the ordinary flow of sequential time opens onto something eternal, when we experience what it means to be fully present rather than constantly becoming. In such moments, we discover that meaning is not something we must pursue but something that surrounds us when we learn to inhabit our experience differently. Memory plays a crucial role in this transformation. Not the mechanical memory that stores information, but what I call living memory, the capacity to allow past experiences to interpenetrate with present awareness in ways that reveal ongoing patterns of significance. When we remember properly, we do not merely retrieve what happened but discover what continues to happen, what remains alive and transformative in our experience. Consider how certain moments from your past continue to emanate meaning. A conversation with a teacher that opened new possibilities, a moment in nature that revealed something previously hidden, an encounter with suffering that deepened your capacity for compassion. These memories are not dead artifacts but living influences, continuing to shape who you are becoming. They participate in what I call the eternal dimension of experience. The key is learning to be present to time rather than constantly trying to escape it. We seek meaning in the future through our plans and projects, or in the past through nostalgia and regret, while the only place meaning can actually be encountered is in the disciplined attention to what is actually happening now. This does not mean abandoning all concern for past and future, but rather learning to engage with them from a center of present awareness. This requires what I have described as a form of prayer, not necessarily religious prayer, but a quality of attention that is simultaneously receptive and intentional, open to what emerges while committed to what matters. In such attention, we discover that every moment contains more than we initially perceived, that reality has depths available to those who approach it with sufficient patience and reverence. The American genius for pragmatic action, when wedded to this deeper understanding of temporality, creates unique possibilities for meaningful living. We need not choose between engagement and contemplation but can learn to act from contemplative depth, to pursue goals that honor both immediate necessity and ultimate significance. Chapter 4: The Role of Tradition in Creating Personal Meaning. One of the greatest obstacles to finding meaning in modern America is our complicated relationship with tradition. We have inherited a culture that celebrates innovation and individual expression while remaining suspicious of inherited wisdom. Yet without some connection to the accumulated insight of human experience, we find ourselves attempting to create meaning from nothing, a task as impossible as speaking a language that we have invented entirely ourselves. This does not mean uncritical acceptance of everything handed down to us. The relationship between tradition and individual talent, as I have explored throughout my work, is one of creative dialogue rather than passive inheritance. We must learn to receive tradition in ways that honor both its wisdom and our own authentic response to contemporary conditions. True tradition is not a museum of dead artifacts but a living stream of insight and practice that has proven capable of generating meaning across different historical circumstances. The great religious traditions, the philosophical schools, the artistic movements, these represent laboratories of human experience where others have grappled with the same fundamental questions that confront us today. Consider how the Puritan tradition of spiritual examination has evolved into the American capacity for psychological introspection, or how transcendentalist insights about nature and intuition continue to inform environmental consciousness and mindfulness practices. These traditions provide not rigid formulas but flexible frameworks for engaging with perennial human concerns. The mistake is thinking we must choose between tradition and innovation. What we need is what I call creative orthodoxy, the ability to work within inherited forms while allowing them to be transformed by our genuine encounter with contemporary reality. A jazz musician works within traditional harmonic structures while creating something genuinely new. A poet employs inherited metrical patterns while discovering fresh possibilities for expression. For Americans, this means learning to appreciate the wisdom embedded in our own cultural inheritance while remaining open to insights from other traditions. The democratic ideals of equality and individual dignity, the pragmatic emphasis on testing ideas through experience, the belief in possibility and renewal, these represent genuine contributions to human wisdom that can serve as foundations for meaningful living. But we must also acknowledge what our tradition lacks and remain open to supplementation from other sources. The contemplative practices of Eastern traditions, the communal wisdom of indigenous cultures, the philosophical rigor of European thought, these can enrich rather than threaten our American pursuit of meaning. The goal is not to become traditionalists in the sense of those who resist all change, but to become what I call tradition bearers, people who receive inherited wisdom in ways that allow it to continue growing and adapting to new circumstances. This requires both humility before what has been learned by others and confidence in our own capacity to contribute to the ongoing conversation about what makes life worth living. Such an approach to tradition provides both continuity and creativity, both grounding and possibility for growth. Chapter 5: Practical Steps for Cultivating Authentic Meaning. Having diagnosed our condition and examined the obstacles to authentic meaning, we must turn to practical cultivation. Meaning is not something we find lying around waiting to be discovered. It is something we must actively create through sustained practice and disciplined attention. Like a garden, it requires both patient tending and skillful intervention. The first practice is what I call attentive reading, not merely of books, though books are important. but of experience itself. Most of us move through our days in a state of semi-consciousness, registering enough to function but missing the subtle patterns and deeper currents that carry significance. Learning to read our experience means developing the capacity to notice what is actually happening, both externally and internally, with sufficient precision to discern its meaning. This begins with the simple practice of paying attention to language, both our own and that of others. Notice how often we use words carelessly, saying fine when we mean exhausted, busy when we mean avoidant, successful when we mean empty. Precise language is not mere aesthetic preference but spiritual discipline, the practice of aligning our expressions with our actual experience. Equally important is cultivating what I call contemplative action, the ability to engage with necessary tasks while maintaining awareness of their larger significance. This means approaching even mundane activities as opportunities for spiritual practice. Washing dishes becomes a meditation on care and attention. Walking to work becomes an occasion for noticing the subtle changes in light and season. Conversation becomes a practice of genuine listening and authentic response. The practice of solitude is essential but must be distinguished from mere isolation. True solitude is not escape from engagement but preparation for deeper engagement. It is the practice of becoming comfortable with our own company, of learning to inhabit silence without immediately filling it with distraction. In solitude, we discover what we actually think and feel beneath the constant noise of social expectation and external stimulation. Regular engagement with great art and literature provides another essential practice. Not as escape from ordinary experience but as education in seeing ordinary experience more deeply. A poem by Dickinson, a painting by Rothko, a symphony by Bach, these works serve as exercises in attention, teaching us to perceive layers of meaning that might otherwise remain invisible. The practice of service, genuine attention to the needs of others, prevents our search for meaning from becoming merely self-centered. Meaning that serves only ourselves tends to collapse into narcissism. Meaning that connects us to something larger than ourselves has the capacity to sustain us through difficulty and to grow stronger through exercise. Finally, the practice of gratitude, properly understood, is not mere positive thinking but a form of spiritual accounting, taking careful note of what has been given to us, both pleasant and difficult, and learning to receive it all as raw material for wisdom and compassion. Chapter 6: Finding Community in an Individualistic Culture. The search for meaning cannot be pursued in isolation. Yet modern American culture often leaves us feeling profoundly alone in our deepest questions, surrounded by people yet lacking genuine community around the things that matter most. We have perfected the art of networking while losing the wisdom of fellowship, mastered social media while forgetting how to create sacred space for authentic encounter. The challenge is particularly acute for those of us who sense that conventional markers of success may not be sufficient for a meaningful life. We find ourselves surrounded by people who seem content with arrangements that leave us spiritually hungry, or we encounter others who share our hunger but lack any shared language or practice for addressing it together. True community forms around shared recognition of what matters most deeply. This is different from the casual connections that emerge from shared interests or circumstances. A book club focused on genuine inquiry into the human condition creates different possibilities than one concerned primarily with social interaction. A workplace where people acknowledge the spiritual dimensions of their labor generates different energy than one focused solely on productivity and profit. The ancient tradition of friendship, what the Greeks called philia, offers resources that our contemporary culture has largely forgotten. This is friendship based not on mutual convenience or entertainment but on shared commitment to helping each other become who we are meant to be. Such friendships require vulnerability about our actual struggles and aspirations, rather than the carefully curated presentations we often offer to the world. Creating authentic community often means taking the initiative to be honest about our own search for meaning, risking the vulnerability of admitting that we are not satisfied with surface-level existence. This can feel dangerous in a culture that often mistakes cynicism for sophistication and spiritual hunger for weakness. Yet such honesty often reveals that others around us harbor similar longings. The practice of genuine conversation becomes essential, conversation that moves beyond the exchange of information or opinions toward mutual exploration of what it means to live well. This requires learning to ask better questions, not just, "What do you do?" but, "What calls to you?" Not just, "How was your weekend?" but, "What are you learning about yourself these days?" Religious communities, when functioning well, provide structured opportunities for such deeper engagement. But religious affiliation is not necessary for creating communities of meaning. What matters is gathering with others around shared commitment to growth, truth-seeking, and mutual support in the sometimes difficult work of living authentically. The digital age offers both obstacles and opportunities for such community. Social media often fragments our attention and encourages performance rather than authenticity. Yet the same technologies can connect us with others who share our deeper concerns, creating virtual communities that supplement or even substitute for local ones when necessary. The key is being intentional about the kind of community we seek to create and sustain. This means being willing to invest time and emotional energy in relationships that support our highest aspirations rather than merely our most immediate needs or desires. It means showing up consistently, offering both support and challenge to others on similar journeys. Such community does not eliminate the solitary aspects of the search for meaning but provides context and encouragement for that search. Chapter 7: Integration and Daily Practice. The ultimate test of our search for meaning lies not in our peak moments of insight but in our capacity to integrate wisdom into the ordinary flow of daily life. We can have profound realizations during meditation retreats or while reading transformative books, but if these insights remain isolated from our mundane responsibilities and relationships, they serve more as spiritual entertainment than genuine transformation. Integration requires what I call incarnational spirituality, the practice of allowing our deepest values and insights to take flesh in our actual choices and behaviors. This means learning to see our daily routines not as obstacles to spiritual development but as the very arena where such development must take place. The way we answer emails, prepare meals, interact with colleagues, respond to frustration, these become opportunities for spiritual practice. This does not mean imposing artificial spiritual significance on every activity, but rather developing the capacity to approach ordinary tasks with the quality of attention we might bring to explicitly sacred activities. When we wash dishes with the same mindfulness we might bring to formal meditation, the dishes become clean and consciousness becomes clear. The practice of what I call temporal architecture becomes essential, designing our days in ways that honor both practical necessity and spiritual aspiration. This might mean beginning each day with a brief period of reflection or reading, taking actual lunch breaks for genuine nourishment rather than hurried consumption, ending the day with gratitude and honest assessment of how we have lived. Such architecture requires saying no to some things in order to say yes to what matters most. In a culture that equates busyness with importance, this can feel counterintuitive. Yet without some protection of time and attention for reflection and renewal, we inevitably find ourselves living reactively rather than purposefully. The practice of seasonal awareness offers another dimension of integration. Just as the natural world moves through cycles of growth and rest, expansion and contraction, our spiritual lives require similar rhythms. There are times for intensive learning and growth, and times for consolidation and integration. There are seasons for bold action and seasons for patient reflection. Regular practices of review and course correction become necessary. Weekly periods for honest assessment. Where did I act from my deepest values this week? Where did I get caught in patterns of reactivity or avoidance? What am I learning about myself and what adjustments might serve my continued growth? The goal is not perfection but what I call conscious evolution, the practice of learning from experience in ways that allow us to respond more wisely to similar situations in the future. This requires developing tolerance for the inevitable gaps between our aspirations and our achievements while maintaining commitment to continued growth. Perhaps most importantly, integration means learning to trust the process of gradual transformation rather than demanding immediate dramatic change. Like a tree that grows slowly but steadily toward light, meaningful development often happens beneath the threshold of conscious awareness, becoming visible only in retrospect. The fruit of such integration is not a life free from difficulty or uncertainty, but a life lived with increasing alignment between our outer circumstances and our inner convictions. We become people who can be trusted to act from principle rather than mere preference, who contribute to the healing rather than the fragmentation of our communities and culture. Conclusion. The search for meaning in what often feels like a meaningless world is not a luxury for those with time on their hands, but an urgent necessity for anyone who wants to live rather than merely survive. We have seen that meaning is not something we stumble upon by accident but something we must actively cultivate through disciplined attention to the depths available in ordinary experience. The path leads through honest recognition of our spiritual condition, critical examination of the false substitutes our culture offers, and patient cultivation of practices that connect us to sources of significance that transcend our immediate circumstances. It requires both solitude and community, both engagement with tradition and creative response to contemporary challenges. Most importantly, we have discovered that the search itself transforms us. In learning to read our experience more carefully, to inhabit time more fully, to create authentic community, and to integrate wisdom into daily practice, we become the kind of people capable of generating meaning rather than merely consuming it. The wasteland can bloom, but only through our willingness to tend it with intelligence, patience, and hope. The fragments of modern experience can be assembled into new forms of wholeness, but only through our commitment to the slow work of spiritual cultivation. In a culture that promises everything immediately, we choose the ancient path of gradual transformation through sustained practice. The invitation stands before each of us, to become artists of our own existence, poets of our daily experience, gardeners of meaning in whatever circumstances we find ourselves. The work is difficult but not impossible, solitary but not isolated, contemporary but rooted in wisdom that transcends any particular historical moment.